ones. Our team, Jojo, who was on one of the programs here a little while ago, she's from a Christian family. Dowie, Jonathan Thomas, he's from an unchurched family. And that's what tribe is. And there is people who don't notice that distinction.
Right.
So what I'm saying is that it's something that the group any group has to grow into. You can't just click your fingers and change it. And I've known groups that have made big mistakes in the main guy gets a big vision to reach out to gangs and street kids and whatever, goes out and gets them, brings them all in, terrifies the living daylights out of the Christian kids he's got. They don't come. So not only do the ones don't get saved that arrive, but the ones he's got he loses. That's just crazy.
So you're saying that there is a way that you can prepare young Christians to be able to cope with that influx and not to be influenced, because when these people first come, obviously there's a whole number of things which they have still got in their lives which we would not want Christians to be involved in, but so that they're not influenced, but so that they can make a stand, but also that they can accept these people and work together.
Yes, there is a way, but what I would say as well, and this goes back quite a long time, a lesson I learned way back in the 80s when the world was young, that I was leading a youth group then, some of whom are the parents of the ones that are in tribe now. Does that make me old, Doug?
Yes, it does.
I'm old. But we learned a lesson. There was, in the same church, there was like a youth club running, which wasn't part of what we were doing. So we encouraged our folk to get involved, to help out in the youth club. But I selected certain people who I knew would relate well, etc. If I'd sent all of them down, they would have been made mincemeat of because they weren't evangelistic, or they weren't cool enough, or they were the sort of kids that get picked on in school anyway, or just didn't have the gifting to be able to mix in that way. So it isn't a case of whatever happens, we'll bring in all those unchurched kids. You've got to make sure that your core is safe. You've got to make sure that the 99 are okay before you go looking for the lost one. So we would not swamp our group with a load of unchurched kids, terrifying the daylights out of our lot, you know. Hey, we're strong enough now, we could cope with 100 unchurched kids, but certainly in the early days we wouldn't.
Right.
So, but also relationship is a key thing. Not just getting them along to meetings, but your relationship with the youngsters that you've got. And you know, they need to feel, for instance, the Christians you have need to know that they have a purpose, that they're praying in the background, or they know that they need to go and talk to some of the new kids that are coming. You know, it all helps them to realise that they're playing their part, you know, which is what we do. Tonight,
yes,
a lot of our workers are away. And so a lot of the tribers are stepping up to the plate. So we've got 3 or 4 tribers running a big rock solid of 30, 40 kids with no older ones involved. The oldest is 18 of the tribers. There's a discipleship group straight afterwards. 2 17 and 18-year-olds are leading that. And then tribe, the full tribe later on. Jojo's involved, who's 20 or thereabouts. But then a number of other younger ones are involved. And it's all part of building strength, challenging them, stretching them.
James, both of you have obviously shared what you're doing. If you could really set up and describe the goal of youth work today in general, okay, would it just be what you're doing, or do you think there are other aspects? Well, in other words, wherever Christian youth work is going on, we need, whether you call it a vision, a goal, whatever you want to call it, you need something you're going after, because if you're not going after it, you're never going to get there. What should that be? What should be at the heart of leadership that is following on with those areas?
Well, I actually think that what JT said a few minutes ago was actually really quite profound. It's really, wherever youth work is, and whether you want to call it that or not, and whatever we're doing as part of that, it's all got to be really about getting young people to actually authentically engage with God as He is and where they are. because so much of youth work can be selling a pre-packaged faith that we have molded ourselves into what we understand to be faith, but that never works. And I was reading a book the other day by a psychiatrist called Scott Peck, and he said that there's no such thing as a good hand-me-down religion. It doesn't work. You know, there's no such thing unless we are inviting young people to engage in a way that is real to them where they are. We're not doing proper youth work. All we're doing is having a marketing campaign, and that's not what we're here to do. And I think really the crux of the matter is that we have got to lay down what we see as churchianity or as Christianity as we have interpreted it, and we've just got to give as best that we can the bare bones of what Christ taught, of how he engages with us, how we experience that. Really, not with all the fancy bells and whistles, but how he actually engages with us. I remember that one of the big things for me, the big life-changing experiences for me, was that I saw that American missionary in a cafe one time. I was walking down the road in my part of Leeds, and I looked through the window, and he was just sat there with the Bible in front of him. And there was just the biggest smile all over his face. And he was on his own, just completely on his own. But that book was just so engaging for him, and he was incredibly engaged in it. And he was seeing that. It wasn't seeing the doctrines or the big poster of the Ten Commandments. It wasn't any of that. It wasn't seeing the picture of Christ on the cross, even when I was a young person, that really got me. It was the fact that this made a difference when nobody else was watching. And to see that was so life-giving for my faith. And I think the main thing of any youth work has got to be to get to that stage with young people, to show young people that this is not an old storybook, but that actually this is an engaging and exciting piece of work. It's basically a history of what God has done. And we've got to show that carries on to what God is now doing.
And that's part of living our life, isn't it? Because what you just said there, you saw that guy. He didn't know you were there, so he wasn't putting anything on. But you saw his life. I think it's so easy in any form of teaching and in any form of communication, isn't it? I will tell you what to do and you go ahead and do it. And yes, there is part of that. Teaching is telling people what it's like and what to do. But unless the life backs that up, it's really going to get nowhere. And I suspect that is part of the problem with a lot of youth work, is that the life of us as the teachers is not manifesting what we're saying to those young people.
Absolutely. I mean, unless we ourselves are being energized by the Word of God and by Christ and by the Spirit, how on earth can we have the audacity to expect anybody else to be? You know, we have to be living what we're talking about, really. And I think sometimes we've got to remember that young people have to rebel. They have to reject the forms that you're giving them.
Tell me why. You've said that twice today.
No,
it rings the bells in my brain somewhere. I've got one somewhere. But tell me why you say that. Is if you've got great spiritual insight to that, or is it your experience? Tell us why you say that.
My experience is that young people, if they are just taking the prepackaged religion that's given to them, and they may run with that for a few years, but they will never dig deep into it. They will never dig deep into it until they've questioned it, until they've almost rejected it, until they've said, no, that can't be right, that can't be right. I need to check that out. I need to see whether this works in my life. And they're not living their parents' life, they're not living their youth workers' life, they're not living their pastor's life or their teacher's life. They're living their life, and their life will be very different in all of its experiences to any of these people. And so that faith has to be real in their life, and that will include rejecting a lot of the things that are given to them that have perhaps worked for their parents, the way their parents have done things. They may have to reject that and then maybe find it again and find that it does work. But until they really get to that stage where they can reject it, they can never go down deep into it.